thank you to Berwick and Bruce and Margie and Chelsea and the other members of the Bruce Lynton BM Service Division for inviting us this morning. And I'd just like to hand over to Berwick. Well, first up to say congratulations on your efforts at Bathurst.
We've got the race cars on display this morning because that's what I think a lot of you would like to see. So we've got 3 cars here from the 6 hour. A little bit on the workshop is we've got 3 team members that work here. Keith is our service advisor. Keith worked with us at the dealership. Keith's been, I guess, in the BMW family around the world since '94, Keith. So in Australia and overseas, in Malaysia and Singapore, and done driver training with BMW in Germany as well. Aaron and Liam, both BMW techs. Aaron, 2008, I think, started with BMW. Liam, 2005. Liam's been with BMW in the UK and then with us at Bruce Lynton, and stayed on with the Rhodes family and came here last year when we opened this. Aaron left BMW and came to Land Rover with us and has stayed with us, but spent a lot of time with BMW. Aaron has built the 3 race cars you see here. We built this blue one when we still had the Land Rover dealership in 2017. We took it to Bathurst for the Challenge Bathurst. It still had a standard road diff in it. Still actually had the speed limiter in it, which we worked out down at Conrod. Standard exhaust. And Tim, my co-driver, who's a BMW dealer, along with other brands in orange, nearly did the same time they'd done in pole that year for the 6 hour, when it was still hitting a speed limiter on the second hump down Conrod. In 18 we went to Bathurst in the 6 hour, and we were leaving with 20 minutes to go when the wheel stud snapped on the rear right and I lost a wheel going across the top. So that was disappointing because it was its second race, and it had one race meeting before that where we won all 4 races, so it was going to be looking good for a good car. Went back in 2019 with the car and won the 6 hour by a lap, beating the M4. So it was pretty convincing. And then obviously this year we took 3 cars. We built the grey car that we own and lease out to the Ellery. So a good story there that Steve came back from retirement to drive with his 2 sons, who had been driving it last year in the QPC, so the Queensland Production Car Championship. Steve jumped in it in January, I think, this year for the first time. And I had a joke with his dad. I said, he'll do a lap time on lap 4. His dad looked at me and said, well, you got that wrong. I said, yeah, he did on lap 5. So he finished straight back in. And they had a good run at Bathurst. Unfortunately, the intercooler failed on the car, probably just after halfway. It's a known problem with the M cars, but you don't know when to replace them at $1,800 each. So they went down 3 laps. I think they finished 17th in the end, but realistically, if that hadn't happened, they were top 5 all day. And then we finished this car, I'm going to say 3 weeks before Bathurst. Took it to Queensland Raceway for a shakedown test, and that was the week that Van Gisbergen came to the test. We didn't know if he'd drive or not because he'd obviously broken his collarbone a week or so beforehand. They'd done the operation. He turned up to the test. There was only 2 cars there, so it was all very quiet. Triple Eight didn't want anybody to know that he was driving the car. He jumped in it. I think he did 9 laps, and never having driven the car, never driven on the MRF tyres, which are a different tyre. They're not a race tyre that we're used to. They're a transferred road tyre into a race tyre. They're very hard. They've got not as much grip as the other tyres that we're used to driving on. So they don't stop as well, they don't put a power down as well, and they don't have any mid-corner lateral grip. So it's a challenge to get the most out of the car. And of course he did 2 quick laps, which then when we were at Bathurst, he told me he did one-handed because his collarbone was hurting. And he flew, I think, to Sandown that week to race at Sandown, where they all thought, will he drive, won't he drive? And of course he cleaned them up. But it's the last time we invite him to the 6 hour. He ruined the party. Tim, my co-driver, is still not happy with me. But no, he wanted to come. He reached out through he's good mates with Tristan Ellery, and he wanted to win. He wanted the 3 wins, especially after winning the 1,000 last year, so he said, I want to be in a good car. Then he spoke to Aaron a fair bit about whether the car was capable and whether the 2 blokes he was driving with were capable. And, you know, to watch him operate down at Bathurst over those few days, and he worked closely with Aaron and Liam, who were both down there, and you know, Aaron was the team manager. We had, I think, 21 people in the team running 3 cars, plus the drivers. But just to listen and his enthusiasm for all of it. He was certainly getting some help from one of his engineers that he was driving with in the GT car that he was down there also driving the weekend. But to be able to jump from a GT race and then, you know, a couple of hours later being this, and the way he drives it, and I got to follow him for a few laps when he passed me, and I think there's marks on both cars where he hit me. And but his driving technique to try and maximise the most out of these tyres was incredible to watch, because he would brake 30 to 50 metres earlier than me in every corner, but not as hard, because he was trying to control the balance of the car. And his adaptability to drive it, and looking after the brake pads and looking after the car, and thinking about strategy the whole time, tapping Aaron on the shoulder regularly, and you know, they're the guy on the radio, Hamish, and their strategy, and he wanted to know it all. And he was involved in all of it. He would take his 2 co-drivers, they'd disappear for an hour or 2 at a time looking at data. He was trying to help them find time to make sure that they were, you know, competitive. We put him a lap down early in the race, and I think that's when he jumped in it to get him back on pace. And then he obviously did the last 2.5 hours, I guess, or close enough to 2.5 hours in the race, and they beat us in the end officially by 8 seconds after 6 hours. So a 1-2 for the team was a great result, a big effort by Aaron especially to run 3 cars. And pretty much all weekend, other than an intercooler issue, which you just don't see coming, the cars ran faultlessly, you know, and it's a testament to BMW. BMW's won every 6-hour race in, I think that's 5 years now. You know, and we've gone down there and we've started from pole 3 times. Obviously this car was in different livery for that race. It started from pole. You know, so these are the cars. So this one is the one that won the 2019 race, came second this year. It's a 2015 M3 that was a write-off in Sydney that we bought at auction. So we buy stacked write-offs. They're cheaper than buying new cars. The grey car was a stat write-off out of Brisbane. And when we strip them, we sell what we don't want. And we end up selling the seats out of the grey car to the bloke who crashed it, who owned it. And that's how we know where it came from. And then this car was a write-off in Sydney as well. It just took a lot longer to build. It's changed ownership. Shane Smolin owns the car now. It's changed ownership whilst we've been building it. Shane ran last weekend at Sydney. Aaron took the car down to Sydney last weekend, and he ran the Australian production car sprint series. So the sprint rounds are 4 30-minute laps on MRF tyres as well. And he won, only did 3 races because of the fog on Sunday morning, but he won all 3 races. And before Bathurst, we went to Sydney with this car and the grey car for the Australian Endurance Production Car Championship, which we won, Tim and I won in this car, which was 4 1-hour races, and we ran MRFs. This is a test session for Bathurst, mainly just to get your head around again driving MRFs. It's different to how you approach driving on Hankook, which is what we would run on in the Queensland series. The cars, the engines are untouched. They are, the engine in that car is out of the blue shell here. That they had an engine being built in Sydney, it wasn't ready. So we pulled the engine out of the blue car and put it in that car. So it's my engine that won Bathurst. But they're just, none of these engines have been pulled apart. This one will get pulled apart at the end of this year. That's done 3 seasons. But they're just standard, everything inside them is standard. We're not allowed to change. We actually have to run less boost at Bathurst and in Queensland production cars, so they take 0.34 boost off us. So trying to find a tuner when you say I need you to make me a tune with less boost than standard. They're like, are you sure? We're like, well, we have to, because it's got a, you see the grey car's got the bonnet and the boot up. Under the bonnet you'll see a little blue box. It's the data logger for the boost that it runs. got the boost monitoring, and they plug a laptop in to see what boost we're running and see what it's making, because the car will change it based on atmospheric pressure, altitude, things like that. But I just can't go over the maximum number. We pull the interior out. All the interior you see left in the car is what's mandatory, so the dashboard and the centre console. Put a roll cage in it. Suspension, we've got the one on the hoist here. You can have a look at the brakes. The front brake calipers are the same as a V8 supercar. And then we change the rear calipers as well. Some of the other guys with the other BMs leave the standard ones. The suspension, the rear are made by Lynton. The front's Murray Coupe from the Sunshine Coast, but Len tunes the shocks for us and has done since we built this car. And with our 1M as well, he was doing the rears for us. We're allowed a little bit of brake ducting that you'll see on this car when it's in the air. Again, the rules stipulate what you can have. There's 2 cameras in the car. It's mandatory to have cameras in the car so that if there's an incident, they can come and pull your cameras to look at what happened and review it. We run Motec, again for data, but also it's a way we know what the fuel usage is. It's got in the back, the grey car's got the boot up, and you'll see the surge tank. And it's also got a reader that reads the Motec dash and counts it 100 metres down, so we know when to pit. If they look, there's a couple of them that miss the flashing red lights on the dash and run out of petrol.
Jamie Wincup.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think he'd been to the Jamie Wincup School of Driving. He's like, it ran out of fuel, gave me no warning. We pulled the camera out and said, look, you had a lap and a half of flashing red lights in your eyes. You probably should have come in. So yeah, as I say, the car is pretty standard. We put downpipes on it, get rid of the cats. It's got a straight through exhaust that we do, and we have to manipulate because it's got a ATL tank, 100 litre fuel tank in it from America. It's got a Drexler rear diff, but we have to run the exhaust through because we put the tank in the original spot. Obviously better for weight and safety as well because of its location. It's not at the end of the back of the car, it's under the rear seat. We have to modify the exhaust because obviously it's bigger than the standard saddle tank that takes 100 litres. It's got an aluminium protection tray under it that comes with it. Fuel system, same, the Siamese system that you see on V8s, it's the same stuff. This car has, and that car both got a steering wheel out of Belgium or the Netherlands. That is a racing steering wheel but uses still obviously the sequential paddle shift for the BMW. It's got a couple of buttons on it that we've programmed for a drink, a radio, changing stuff on the Motec dash, and resetting the fuel number once we do a pit stop. At Bathurst they also give us a driving board that we fit in the car that's got buttons on it for each button represents which driver's in the car. You've got to hit that as part of the pit stop. Bit about Bathurst, I guess, for these cars do about 276 kilometres an hour on the Motec, so that's GPS, so that's real. Down before the chase. On MRFs we lift. To go through the chase, on Hankook's we can go through the chase flat. Braking, they stop extremely well. They're a 1,500 kilo car. They still stop well. We run Serco pads. When we went for the first 6 hours with this car, we didn't know what pads would last 6 hours, and we tried Project Mu, Serco, and Endless, and measured them after each session. And Serco were the only ones. And when we won the race in 2019, the front right outer pad was metal to metal in the top corner. But the other 2 brands wouldn't have made it. We would have had to do a pad stop in the middle of the race. Now that race went green other than 10 laps. We had 2 safety car periods, that's it, for 10 laps. The rest of it was green. That day we did 813 kilometres, so 113 laps I think around Bathurst, so in 6 hours. So when SVG talked to Aaron about this car and he says, are they quick? He said, yeah, they'll do 270 something down Conrod. He was, oh okay, so they're not slow. And but yeah, so lap time on the MRFs is they were doing 226s at the end of the race. That was around the qualifying. They did 25s, maybe 24. Tim did a 24 on MRFs in this car in 2019. I did a 22 dead, or 21 something, on hand clips being held up across the top in 2018 on hand clips. So the GT4 BMW does a 2 minute 17. I think if we put this on slicks, it'd actually be quicker than the GT4 car, because they detune them as well with USB sticks. So yeah, so it's not a slow car. And this year in the 6 hour, there was, I think, 7 of them started the race. Either M3s or M4s. So this car here is an M5 for a client. We're doing an engine rebuild. You'll see over there on the trolley, he's ordered a whole lot of aftermarket pistons and rings and stuff from VAC in America. And he wants to roll race this one. So he's looking for 1,000 horsepower out of it. So we've just got all the parts back to build it. So we've started building that one. As I said, that's the car I drive, that's Shane's car. The blue car there, we've got 2 people interested in us building them a car for Bathurst next year. Both gentlemen that I've raced against years ago that want to drive with their sons now. One from Newcastle, a guy from Adelaide. We've got the next car down is an Ellery car, which is the same as this car. Other than the doors being different and the shape of the roof, the cars are identical. They're the same engine, obviously. And then some customer cars outside. I'm storing my wife's Mini down the end there. So yeah, so we've been here at BM Service. We established it just getting a lot of phone calls and queries about people not wanting to go to the dealership at $260 odd an hour. So we thought we're getting a lot of that, and then we started getting a lot of Land Rover people getting quoted $5,000 for brakes, and it's like, that's ridiculous. So we started out targeting BMW. We do some Land Rover, we do some other stuff as well. Got a lot of our old staff that bring their cars here. We've been doing some work on a guy that had an M3, now he's got a McLaren, so Aaron does a lot of work on that, and he tracks that. So yeah, so we started here in July last year, a bit before, but July was when we were out of our non-compete clause with our Land Rover sale, and just slowly building the business. So if you get a business card on your car somewhere around the Gold Coast, it'll either be my wife or Dad probably putting a business card on your door to let you know where we are. And it's just building up through word of mouth, and you know, we use a lot of the BMW diagnostic and scan tools and stuff. We've got a lot of them here. We've also got the Land Rover one, but yeah, we use Castrol oils currently. We use the 2 BMW oils in the tanks there, and looking to build it up and just make it busy, and then if need be add more space and work out where to move the race cars to, maybe if we get that busy, but we'll see. But yeah, so as I said, for us it's easy because the 3 guys that are here all work with us in the dealership, so they know what our expectations are, they know what I'm like to work with, I know what they're like. It's a small team, we want it to be harmonious, and you know, it's important that as a team we do it and approach it, and I can leave them to their own accord. So Keith, as I said, you know, service advising with us for a long time, I think 5 years, and then another 4.5 years with the dealership up the road. And then came here in April, May last year, started to get us ready to go. And the 2 mechanics here are through and through BMW and been trained on BMW the whole way through their careers. They both started with BMW, so I guess that's what we're doing here and what it is. So thanks for coming along.
Thanks a lot.